Welcome to the Brainiate Show, where we talk about all things Salesforce, sharing the coolest features, solutions, and best practices to turn you into a Salesforce rockstar. Here's your host, former attorney turned Salesforce consultant, trainer, and MVP, David Giller.
In this episode, I sit down for a chat with Daniel Peter, Salesforce MVP, Bay Area Salesforce Developer User Group Organizer, and Lead Applications Engineer at Kenandy. Daniel shares his wild experiences at 3 Salesforce Community events, Punta Dreamin, Snowforce, and Punta Dreamin. I think Daniel traveled more in the last few weeks than I did in the last 15 years. Daniel gives us some insight and advice on how he uses Salesforce to solve common business problems using both native and custom solutions in ways that are both effective and efficient. Daniel Peter, welcome to the program. How are you today?
Great, thanks. How are you?
I can't complain. I'm really excited to have you on the program for a couple of different reasons. First of all, you are very involved in the Salesforce community, and you are often posting pictures, or particularly recently, you've been posting pictures from a couple of different Salesforce events, and I'd love for you to share some of the insights that you have from these regional events.
Dreamforce only comes around once a year, so we have to go to these community events to get our fix. You know, who can wait a year to see everybody and learn all the stuff that's just happening. I've actually done 3 so far this year. I probably won't talk too much about Tahoe Dreamin'. That was in January, but actually I just got back from Uruguay. I don't know how many of you know about Punta Dreamin', but this was in Punta del Este, Uruguay. And prior to that, I was at Snowforce in Salt Lake City, so I did back-to-back community conferences. I packed my bags for the snow in Snowforce, and I also packed for the beach down in Uruguay. So
unbelievable.
Yeah, it was kind of an exercise in preparedness and how can you pack enough stuff and get it on the airplane to survive for 2 weeks in different conditions. And
at airport security, did they start asking you all kinds of interesting questions, having snow boots and a bathing suit?
I did have some issues in airport security, but it was more about the swag. I actually brought some Kenandy swag down to Uruguay, and it basically looked like I had a box of 100 large pieces of ammo or something like that in the X-ray. So it was they were like multi-tools with a bunch of screwdrivers in them. You know, I had to explain what that was all about. So.
But nobody had to bail you out of jail or anything like that, I hope.
No, I successfully made the trip with, I would say, 0 issues. There was, for all the logistics involved and all the unknowns, it actually all worked out perfectly. So.
That's great. So tell us a little bit about, let's start with the most recent, Punta Dreamin'. Tell us a little bit about what you've learned there, how many people, where were most of the people from? Bring it on.
Yeah. So this was the first Latin American, I think, Salesforce conference, but definitely Salesforce Community conference. And a lot of people might not know this, but in Montevideo, Uruguay, there's actually a fair amount of Salesforce development talent. I think it's mostly organized around kind of an offshore model, similar to India. So these folks are doing work for, primarily U.S.-based companies. And, they're maybe not on a lot of people's radar. So this was a chance to meet them, see what they're doing, learn more about them. And it was primarily Uruguay-based, but there was people there from other countries in Latin America as well. So, Argentina, Bolivia, things like that. So that area is kind of a magnet for the rest of Latin America, as it's got a lot of the talent there. But it's really great for these folks that maybe haven't been to the U.S. before or haven't been to Dreamforce, to be able to sort of bring some of that to them and then bring them to the rest of the world. This conference was really great. It was a little different format. We actually had everybody in the same room. We had over 100 people attending, and we were able to, a lot of community conferences now have grown to the size where they've got parallel tracks going.
Right.
And this conference could have had parallel tracks, but we kept everybody in the same room, so we all had the same experience from beginning to end, which actually has a lot of positives to it. You don't have to choose which session you want to be in. You get to see everybody and experience throughout the whole day. So by the end of the day, you can really relate to each other because you all saw the same stuff. So
right.
I actually liked it, and I would be totally cool if that was the format going forward as well.
And that
Montevideo tends to be.
That probably also.
Sorry, go ahead.
That probably also introduced many fantastic networking opportunities. Being in the same room with the same group of people, whether it's 50 people or 500 people, you get to connect a whole lot more versus having different tracks. In theory, your best friend might be there, but you're never crossing paths.
Yeah, so that was one of the main reasons I wanted to go, was for the networking. I've been going to these conferences for quite a while now, quite a few years, and it's great. You start to see a lot of the same people over and over again, and that's not a bad thing. But it's not the same experience. You don't need to ask, where they work. You already know where they work, and you're not learning so much new stuff about them. It's more just finding out, maybe any incremental information. But this was a conference in particular where a lot of these people I had never met before, maybe never heard of before. So the networking aspect was that much more important. So the format really lent itself towards getting the full experience.
That's awesome.
The networking end of things. Yeah.
And you got to enjoy, not that, so for those who don't know, you're in the San Francisco Bay Area, so you got to enjoy some nice weather, a little bit different from San Francisco. I'm in the East Coast, so dramatically different. When I'm looking at the images, the photos that have been posted, I'm like, oh, I would have loved to be in that weather right now. So that must have been a nice treat.
Yes, I got off the plane there, and I showed up in the town with the biggest smile on my face. It was summertime there, and it was gorgeous. So it's not unlike going to Hawaii or something like that. It's on mainland South America, but it really just feels like an island. The other thing is it's not tropical. It's not humid there, so it's pretty much just like a nice summer day, say in the Bay Area. 70, maybe 80 degrees at the highest, not too much humidity, beautiful beaches. So it was kind of a very meditative experience to be able to be in that environment and also do some work. So, it kind of restructured my work day around the Uruguayan schedule. Maybe get up in the morning and enjoy the beach, and then have a late breakfast, and by the time I've already enjoyed maybe half my day, the U.S. is starting to wake up. So
yeah,
it was great. My first time in South America, so really learned a lot outside of the conference. Really learned a lot about South America and culture.
That's awesome. Tell me a little bit about Snowforce, going from one extreme to the next.
Yeah.
Where was that? So, about how many people? What kind of crowd typically attends? Tell me about that experience.
Yes. So Snowforce is a great conference. It's kind of one of the granddaddies. It's been around a similar amount of years to Midwest Dreamin. So it's got kind of a critical mass going. They've grown fairly large. They're over 300 attendees now. They had a new venue this year. Very cool. So the cool thing about community conferences is you get to kind of add your own theme, your own flavor from where you choose to host these things. So,
right.
You can have them at a hotel, conference center, convention center, or you can choose some kind of funky venue that really kind of adds to the experience. So that's what Snowforce did this year. They picked actually a concert venue called the Depot, which is like a converted train depot in downtown Salt Lake City, and that was awesome. I mean, there's been some cool names that have played on that stage, and then here we are watching Peter Coffey up there on the same stage. So that was great. That's one of the ones that has parallel tracks. It's a bit of a bummer because you want to watch all three sessions at once, but you have to pick one.
Right.
So if you're lucky, then you feel like you're mostly a developer or mostly an admin, and you can stick with one track or the other. But if you kind of have a foot in both worlds, it becomes harder to choose. So, but I really enjoyed it. There was so many highlights. I got to meet people that I already knew and maybe strengthen relationships, like learn things about them I didn't know. I got to meet brand new people. One of the things that I thought was really cool was there was a new class of MVPs that I'd read about them online. I hadn't seen them in person yet,
right.
And Adrian Larson, I'm not sure if you know about him. He's a really cool guy. He was presenting a session there. He's a new MVP. I got to spend a little time with him, and he's one of 3 moderators on Stack Exchange. So very cool to be able to meet him.
Think about the level of information that is being passed through his fingers on a daily basis.
Yeah.
A moderator on Stack Exchange.
So everybody's kind of got their own preferred channels and way to interact with the community, and he's really just killing it on Salesforce Stack Exchange. So I think that's one of his channels of choice. So, and anyone who's a Salesforce developer, that's probably their workflow is, Google, find the answer on Stack Exchange, paste it in. So, I mean,
right.
It's really a key resource for Salesforce developers. Very important piece of the community.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was cool to meet him. One interesting thing about Snowforce is, it's a great conference, and then the second day we go up to Solitude. We hang out at the lodge. We go skiing, snowboarding, things like that. So it gives you a chance to network with these folks in a kind of a different environment where, things may come up that wouldn't come up otherwise. By putting yourself in a situation maybe that's can be a little bit challenging, such as, snow activities. You kind of go through an experience with other folks, and you have that common bond between you, how you did something like that. And that's a great way to, kind of unite a team against some other goal and kind of build the relationship that way. So
absolutely.
I wasn't, I'm not a skier, but I wouldn't mind learning how to ski, but I didn't really want to risk it. This particular trip, I was headed down to Uruguay. So a group of us decided to go snowshoeing because that was a new experience for us and pretty low risk. And so we did a nice long snowshoeing excursion through the wilderness. And, it's hard work. It's kind of like 3 times harder than, say, hiking on a dry trail. So we had that difficult experience we got through, and we had the benefit of seeing all the beautiful scenery together. And when you're doing that kind of stuff, it's sort of naturally builds a relationship, and things kind of come out related to our different overlapping interests in the Salesforce ecosystem. So
yeah,
that was
without a
really
doubt.
a great experience. Yeah.
That's very cool. Sounds like you had some amazing experiences at these regional events, both from a learning, connecting with others within the community perspective. Getting to see some of the Salesforce celebrities, Peter Coffey, as well as others, whether it's Salesforce MVPs or just others who are very active in the community, which is great. And that's one of the many benefits of participating in these regional events. Good for you.
Yeah. One uniting theme of the two, I actually was able to present the same session at both conferences. So I spoke at both of these, and I spoke on the same topic, which is this Hyperbatch open source project I'm working on. We can talk about it later more if you want, but I had about an hour to present this thing at Snowforce, but I only had a half an hour at Punta Dreamin. So,
ouch.
Yeah, so I cut a lot of stuff out when I presented in South America, but same stuff, and I'm pretty proud of this this project I'm working on, and it's just so cool to like kind of see people's eyes light up and have them either ask questions during the session or come up afterwards and say, yeah, I'm trying to do this thing, and it takes 24 hours, and I really want to try this out on it. And like, yeah, well, hopefully this would do your 24-hour thing in 5 minutes. I'd love to have you try it out and give me your feedback. So I really feel like I'm kind of making a difference and showing people some new ways of thinking about things, and hopefully, ease some of their Salesforce pain. So.
Right. No, absolutely, and you're 100% right. A big piece of it is just giving back, paying it forward, helping others who are either new to the platform or they're not necessarily new, just struggling with a particular issue that you happen to know how to solve.
Yeah, so it was two seasons, two hemispheres, but similar topic and similar experience presenting. So that's very cool. It's very cool to take one thing and apply it 2 places and kind of have this little bit of a uniting theme, like it's like a rock star on tour, maybe in 2 different countries that speak 2 languages, but maybe the people's experience of that is the common theme. So.
Definitely. So let me ask you, sort of take a time warp, go into a time warp back in time to when you first got involved in Salesforce. So if you could think back to when you first got involved in Salesforce as a tool, tell us a little bit about your initial impressions.
Sure. I do remember that, actually. Maybe just to take one more step back for some context.
Sure.
But, I've been programming my whole life. I think I remember 3rd grade. I was programming hypercard scripting and C++ through my teens, and every different iteration of computer and so forth. So when it came time to go to college, I actually chose to still stay in the computer realm, but to diversify somewhat. So I didn't want to take a lot of programming courses. I really wanted to focus more on business. So I took a MIS degree for my undergrad at Chico State, which was kind of, half business, half programming. And then I said, man, I don't want any more programming, this is what I've been living and breathing my whole life. So I went on to do an MBA, so just business. I wanted to learn marketing, business strategy, venture capital, finance kind of concepts. What I did while I was in college and when I got out of college was I did consulting. So it's kind of a sole proprietor, did a lot of small business work. Basically any platforms they were using, I was happy to learn and adopt. So, these were things like Microsoft technologies, PHP, various desktop business apps that needed integration. So I had kind of a mix of repeat clients and one-time clients. I did that kind of work and really enjoyed it. A lot of unique challenges up until about 2009, and so this was the subprime mortgage crisis. I'm sure this affected lots of people.
Right.
And what the net effect was, one of my largest clients there ended up selling his company to Wells Fargo, which was kind of cool because a lot of the software I built for him was sold to Wells Fargo, and they adopted some of that stuff.
Wow.
But at the same time, I had to decide, do I want to find some more big clients in a market that's kind of tightening up, or do I want to maybe consider taking a full-time gig? So, I was actually still living in this little town called Sebastopol, California. It's about an hour and a half north of San Francisco, and there happened to be one tech employer there, Safari Books Online. That's a child company of O'Reilly Media. Maybe you've heard of them. They're like Netflix for tech books. And they're one of the largest employers in that little town of Sebastopol. And it just so happened at the time I was considering a full-time gig, they were hiring for a Salesforce developer. So I'd never heard of Salesforce before. And, I started researching it. I thought, man, I've been programming my whole life, and I've been running these servers like in closets, or, I've been like having to provision hardware myself, and it's not really one of those value-added activities I want to keep doing. So there's this thing called the cloud that you don't have to worry about any of that. I mean, this is really the future, So 2009 was when I made a decision. I applied for this Salesforce developer job, learned about Salesforce, learned about the cloud, and kind of, more or less said, I'm tired of the on-premise stuff. I'm tired of the hardware. I want to just go into software. So they hired me with no Salesforce background, and they put me through Salesforce developer course with Leah McGowan Hare, and then right after that I took the 401 exam and passed. So it kind of they hired somebody with a lot of development and business skills and trained them to be a Salesforce developer very quickly. So that was my first venture into the Salesforce world, and this was very cool because they were a Salesforce customer that was very committed to using Salesforce in every way possible. So we set up a lot of cool stuff. We got the whole 360 view going, sales, marketing, customer service, a little bit of the core product even. So we really did a lot of cool stuff with Salesforce, and I could go into a lot of stories about things that we did. Some of the cooler examples were things around predictive models. So we actually did a marketing campaign, basically built Einstein 5 years before it came out. And
wow.
That's why I'm excited about Einstein, because when they talk about a lot of these success stories, I know they're true because we witnessed them firsthand 5 years ago, but except we had to put in a ton of work to make them happen. So, but yeah, you get way better click-through rates on your emails if you're tailoring the content to folks based on their prior behaviors.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's basically like free. It's almost like free money,
Right. Without a doubt.
Yeah, very cool stuff. So while I was there, I actually started the North Bay Salesforce Developer User Group.
How did that come about? Did it just landed on your lap? You just woke up one day and said, "Okay, I'm going to start a user group." Tell me how that happened.
I think, if I'm correct, April Nazi sent out a mass mail asking, looking for people to start developer groups, and I started talking with her, and there was already the Bay Area developer group, but it was in San Francisco, and I would drive there if it was a good topic that I was interested in. I would drive the hour and a half to get there, but Most people in the North Bay won't make that drive, and so
Right.
I thought, we need a group right there, and it was cool. I would say it was a great experience because now I can sympathize with a lot of the other folks running user groups in cities that are smaller, that have to really work at creating the content themselves. They really have to work at getting the guests to come in. They have to dig a lot deeper. So I really know what that's like from running the North Bay group. And you learn about the industries in your area. So the North Bay is a lot of wine. So a lot of folks in the wine industry are using Salesforce. So it's that unique regional industry stuff,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about how you might have used Salesforce recently to solve a particular problem.
Yeah. So fast forward to now. I'm not working for a Salesforce customer anymore. I'm working for an ISV, or application innovation partner, when that term starts taking hold. So Kenandy is actually building an ERP on top of Salesforce. So I think that's got to be like the most ambitious app you can build on Force.com. There's so much breadth and depth in ERP. So the general types of problems we have to solve are like very data intensive and processing intensive, and on a platform that's full of governor limits, this can provide a big challenge. So one of the problems and solutions that I've had to do, some folks have heard about this, but you really need to learn how to break your processing up into small pieces, because Salesforce can handle a lot of small things very well. It's a multi-tenant platform, so all these different users are doing all their jobs at once. So it's well suited for that, but you have to figure out, how do I turn this big job into a bunch of little small jobs?
Yeah.
I published an article on the developer blogs, and I spoke at Forcelandia on this concept of PK chunking, and it's interesting how we stumbled on this. We tried chunking on other things, which you can do date ranges, you can do different things. We were using like the auto number field. Turns out though, the Salesforce ID is by far the best way to do things, and this thing is very well indexed down at the database level. And there's different ways you can either try to deconstruct the base 62 algorithm, and that makes up that 15 or 18 digit ID, and you can sort of extrapolate all the IDs in between, or you can query for the real IDs with you can use a query locator. But the net effect is you break up this large amount of records into a bunch of small pieces, and then you do your operation on these small pieces, and you're guaranteed the job will finish because each small piece can be done. Salesforce has SLAs as long as your job fits within their governor limits. So our use case was a customer wanted to query and process all their data very fast, and that was the challenge that was thrown down natively on Force.com. How do you pull out tens of millions of records, do some processing, display the result, and how do you do that over and over and over again without having to run a 24-hour batch job or something like that? So it's kind of a big challenge, and we were able to come out the other side after a ton of experimenting and R&D, and it felt pretty good. And the lessons learned from that have really helped us to build a lot of scalable solutions for customers of all sizes going forward. So.
That is absolutely remarkable. Because when you think about an issue like that with only 10 records, 20 records, 100 records, okay, there are different ways you can think about it. Once you start talking in the thousands or tens of thousands, let alone millions of records, it's a whole other ball game.
It is. It's exponentially harder. I think you can slap together software really quickly that has lots of features, but as soon as you add in the requirement of large data running those same features, it is a totally different architecture, to meet those requirements. So you can choose to build it that way to start, and then you'll never have the issue down the road.
Right.
But sometimes that's not the best strategy. Sometimes you actually need to slap it together quickly, run it on some small customers, see if it even passes that muster there before you invest in making it scalable. So,
absolutely. That's true.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about apps on the App Exchange. Everyone's got some favorite apps, or I should say most people have some type of one or multiple apps that they just really love for various reasons. So I find that when I ask this question to different people, I'm always learning about, I shouldn't say always, most of the time, I'm learning about different apps that I've never heard of before. So tell me, if you could choose 2 apps from the App Exchange, which 2 would you say are your favorite and why?
Sure. Well, I have to pick Kenandy as one of them because I actually moved. I like the app so much I decided to move my family to come work for them. So
okay, that's fair.
I think building an ERP is just such a cool thing. It doesn't even, it's in a different category, right? It's like we're building Oracle on top of Salesforce. We're not building something to, clean up your data or, maybe help your campaign a little bit. So it's just like an order of magnitude more complex. I think that's just the fact that we're trying to do this makes it so cool.
Yep.
But the other one, I like the other one I'm going to mention. The reason I like it is because it was one of the first apps I used, and so it had that wow factor of, look what you can do with the App Exchange. So when I was at Safari Books Online, one of my first tasks was to take this manual process of faxing the B2B customers a contract, having them sign it, having them, fax or email it back.
Yeah.
And we implemented Sign, and this was before they got bought by Adobe, and just fascinated with how you could take this this painstaking process that maybe was even so painstaking that it could, potentially hamper a sale and turn it into this 30-second process where you could, from within Salesforce, you could click a button and you could instantly have a contract with all the complex details of the order in front of the customer, who could just type their name and it would go back and everything would be tied into the system, and fully executed contract. And this painful process that just really was a bottleneck, and actually turn it on its head and make it impress the customer with how easy it was to sign with us. So Sign was that first kind of eye-opening factor about how we could not only make something so efficient, but we could do it by sort of just plugging this app from the App Exchange into our Salesforce org with some minimal customization. And if we had to build that from scratch, it would take forever.
Right.
We were able to get that up and running very quick, and it was kind of a big win. At the time when we implemented it, it had very nice integration with Conga Merge, so those kind of went hand in hand. We were able to generate these nice looking contracts from sort of a mail merged Word document right into a PDF, and so that's why I like that one more. It was more about the fact that it was the first one, but it was pretty darn cool also.
Yeah. Digital signatures is something that a lot of people don't think of. And when they do think of it, very often, depending on the organization, especially for the mid to smaller size organizations, they say, oh, wait, it costs how much? I had, for whatever reason, I had the assumption that would come free out of the box with Salesforce. It's like, really? But anyway, they start looking at that there is any additional cost with implementing a digital signature solution. And for various reasons, they feel, I'm not interested. But the efficiencies that get introduced, the time to close a deal is dramatically transformed when we're talking about digital signatures. It just changes the game.
Yeah, it was such a no-brainer. It was, such a big win once we got this thing going. It was like, why did we not do this for so many years,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you actually brought up Adobe Sign. So EchoSign is now referred to as Adobe Sign now that Adobe owns it, because I am actually in the middle of a very large Salesforce implementation for an enterprise-sized organization where they've purchased Adobe Sign prior to actually rolling out Salesforce. And I have to figure out how to integrate the Adobe Sign use case into Salesforce as I'm rolling out Salesforce for them. So I know where I'm going to turn if I need any advice. Thank you, Daniel.
Yeah.
You just signed yourself up
Sure.
for it.
I haven't worked with them since
Oh,
since
sure.
Adobe, but
Back out of it now, won't you?
Yeah, from what I remember,
Mm-hmm.
it was very flexible. Back in those days, it was more about like putting in the right query string parameters.
Right.
These days, you maybe have to do a little more with a REST API. I'm not positive on that.
Uh-huh. I'll look into it. It's all good.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's
Tell me.
interesting that they're
Go ahead.
interesting that they're doing it. They're doing Adobe Sign first and Salesforce second. That's pretty.
I'll tell you what. So with this particular organization, what happened is they realized that they need digital signatures before they saw the bigger picture that they also need a CRM.
Yeah.
So
hopefully you don't have to rebuild everything they've already done.
No, they haven't done anything. The good thing is they haven't done anything. They purchased licenses. No one has used Adobe Sign there yet. It hasn't been rolled out at all. So yeah, total new implementation, which is good.
Yeah. Well, maybe I wonder if they would renegotiate the licenses with Adobe if they're using Salesforce. If there's an incremental fee they need to pay, or
good question.
Or if the Salesforce integration comes for free.
Yeah. Well, I will be finding that out real soon.
Yeah.
So let me ask you on a different topic regarding the Salesforce community. So we talked about your involvement in the Salesforce community as a developer user group organizer, and let's talk about how it's helped you personally. So tell us a little bit about how your involvement in the Salesforce community, whether it's through a user group or it could be just within online connections or the regional events that you participate in, how it's helped you personally.
Sure. So I started the Bay Area Developer User Group Organizer role about almost a couple years ago here in San Francisco. I had gone to that developer group quite a bit when I was in the North Bay. What happens is the organizers of that developer group, since they're right there at Salesforce headquarters, a lot of them over the years end up working for Salesforce, and then they need a new organizer because the developer groups aren't supposed to be run by Salesforce employees.
Right.
So that's how I ended up with that one. That position gives you this incredible opportunity. Every month I think, well, what's like the coolest thing that's going on with Salesforce right now? Who can I contact to see if they'll come talk to us about it? So it gets you this access to the thought leaders, usually Salesforce employees, but not always. They're just building the coolest stuff. Whereas maybe if you cold called them and said, hey, do you want to just, do you want to personally tell me what you're building, or do you want to go out for coffee? You may or may not get it, but when you're actually outreaching, saying, hey, come show a big group of folks who are really interested in what you're doing, you get to meet to meet the who's who in the Salesforce world. So that's been huge.
Yeah.
It's the side benefit of organizing a meetup is you also end up building a relationship with those guests. So
yep.
That's been very cool. The other thing from the community, as I become more involved, I think a lot of us are kind of introverts. So as I become more involved with this, it's building those soft skills of, not worrying about reaching out to people, not worrying about public speaking. So I think the soft skill aspect of it is not to be taken lightly. I think as developers, maybe even admins, maybe to a lesser extent, but we tend to be very focused on our technical skills, and those are important, but they only take you so far. So I think anybody in this line of work needs to be doing whatever they can to also improve their soft skills. And if you have to do a meetup every month, that lights the fire to to do the outreach, to do the public speaking, these types of things. So, and I think the community, this mutually beneficial thing. There's way too many examples to list, but so many times, I put something out there, and then a month later, somebody else has come back with something totally amazing I never would have expected to come out of this. So this whole giving and receiving thing is just this ongoing theme that takes so many forms, but so much good stuff has come out of it. It's come out in the form of being invited to certain things, or people giving me ideas that I would have never had, things like that. So I think don't hesitate to be as involved in the community as you can, because only good is going to happen from it. So.
Yeah. It's good advice. Very good advice. Very practical. So on the topic of advice, if you could give one piece of advice to someone who's new to the world of Salesforce, what would you share with them?
Yeah. So I've learned over the years, I've had certain ideas in my head of what I thought was possible, and I've been taught slowly that was a kind of an artificial, if glass ceiling is the right term, but an artificial ceiling. There's really, it was only me that was setting that, and I've been very fortunate to have some great mentors over the years who kind of helped me break through that. And they were people who learned over the years that, you can't, you don't have to produce this much in a day. You can actually produce 10 times more, 100 times more. So I think my advice would be, don't set that upper limit on yourself, because over the years it's going to, you're going to be shown that that's not really a limit. So the earlier you can sort of just make that upper ceiling kind of vanish on your own, and just, dream really big, as early as you can. Depending on what you're interested in, if you're a developer, the limit should be, every trailhead badge, every certification, meet every person you want to meet, go to every event, find an innovative new way to do your day job, way more efficiently than you ever thought was possible. So I think don't learn the hard way. Don't take too many years, but just tell yourself that these limits don't really exist, and because they don't, and you will be proven wrong at some point. So, be that 10x or 20x person, right out of the gate. Don't set those limits on yourself.
Right, because it's not fair to yourself to limit the boundaries of where you're looking to go, because it will, by design, confine the options that you pursue for yourself. So.
Yes.
Very true.
And at some point, then you'll be that mentor that's showing other people, hey, here's how you do it. It wasn't really this thing that, took all day and had to go through this process. It's actually this thing you can do with, 2 clicks right here, and now you're done, because you thought you removed that sort of, this is the way it's always been done, this is the only way I can do it mentality.
Right. You're 100% right. And, sometimes I even see that not so much from the role of a leader, someone who's leading the Salesforce implementation for an organization, but even from an end user's perspective, when an end user or a business leader will turn to whoever's responsible for the Salesforce implementation at their organization, and they'll say something like, hey, can you give me a checkbox on the blah, blah, blah screen? And when you ask, well, we can give you a checkbox wherever you want. What is it that you want to do with that checkbox? What's the goal of the checkbox? And they say something like, well, I want to put a checkbox so that anytime, let's say, the opportunity hits the following stage, to remind the team member that they need to send this type of an email out to the customer. And most of us who are experienced in the Salesforce platform will say something like, well, how about if we automate that entire process for you, so there's no need for the checkbox, there's no need for anyone to look at that checkbox, whether it's populated or not. Just anytime the opportunity reaches that stage, whatever template you've defined will go out to the following person. Wow, you could do that.
Yeah, so that's just one of many examples how, if you're thinking about something and, it doesn't quite seem right, do what you need to do, seek out an expert, or, throw it out as a broadcast to the community or something like that, because, all these things are constantly being redefined. So it's very dangerous to have that narrow viewpoint on this stuff.
Yeah, without a doubt. Daniel, I really appreciate you being on the podcast. I think your insights and wisdom are tremendously helpful for all of our listeners and for the rest of us in the Salesforce community. Thank you for everything that you do for the community. It's greatly appreciated. I appreciate having you on the podcast, and I look forward to having you on the podcast again in the not too distant future.
Great. Yeah, it's been great talking with you. If any of the listeners are ever in the San Francisco area, look me up or stop by the developer group or something like that. I'd love to meet you.
Absolutely. And you know what? I'm going to put links in the show notes to all the different resources, apps that we've talked about, the different regional events. I will also put a link for the developer user group in the Bay Area so that people can find you.
Thank you. And, these 2 events I talked about, there's going to be a lot of resources coming out of them. So, there's going to be blogs, write-ups. I'm going to do some of it, but also keep an eye out for the events themselves, publishing professional videos, photos, things like that. So there may not be links yet, but, hopefully through the various channels in the community, you can find out more about these events since they're so recent. Content's not quite out yet.
Yeah. We will be looking out for them. I will definitely be looking out for them. So, and actually feel free to share them with me, and I'm happy to share it with those who are following me on Twitter, LinkedIn, etc. So all good.
Definitely, will do.
Great. Thanks again, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, David.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Brainy8 Show. Don't forget to check out the show notes for links to any resources referenced in this podcast. Also, don't forget to head over to brainy8.com to subscribe to the Brainy8 blog, where I regularly share Salesforce-related tips and tricks to help you become a Salesforce rockstar.